Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast for Backlot Banter where we review every single Palme d'Or winner. And today we are talking about a Japanese film from 1953. That would be Gate of Hell, directed by Teinosuke Kinugasa. This is a medieval period Japanese film, and it's got quite a lot of samurai action. So I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. But first, let's get right into it. Roll through our little housekeeping, and then we'll talk about Gate of Hell. We'll pass maybe through the Gate of Hell. Not the gate.
Whoa.
Drop the. Just Gate of Hell. Last time we talked about The Class, the French film, 2008. It was pretty good, we thought, and got an 8.3 out of 10, which put it at spot number 10 on the list. Highly recommend you go check out our deep philosophical discussion about school and authority and growing up and all kinds of good stuff on that episode. Now, Abram, do you have a comment for us to digest, to think about before we go in and think about this movie?
I have a short one here. This comes from our good friend Abby Keg, who says, on our Wild at Heart review, simply cannot believe I was invited to the episode. Sad face, broken heart emoji. Rip David Lynch, Wild Hearters rise up.
True.
Shout out Abby. True. Abby, we apologize.
We do apologize greatly. You know, it should have crossed our minds, frankly.
I don't.
Also, because it's short too, I want to shout out at SlimNave 4846 in the same episode saying, quote, sounds like some of you weren't exactly wild at heart about this movie, ... Be careful, SlimNave. Be careful.
All right. That's strike one. I've got a chalkboard. I keep all commenters who make comments that I find annoying.
I see.
And you know, when they get to 5 or 10,
not even puns, just annoying.
It's just annoying.
Yeah.
I see. Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. Okay.
And then the wrath.
The wrath is unleashed.
Oh my God! Don't let that happen.
You're gonna see you're gonna have your own personal gate of hell. All right. If you get too many tallies.
Mm-hmm. Tanner, would you do us a favor and tell us the plot synopsis for this movie? What transpires over the 90-minute runtime?
Sure. So we find ourselves in 1100s Japan.
1160.
1160, thank you. The Heisei era of Japan. I don't know a whole lot about, these eras and the Japanese Empire and whatnot. But what we do have here is an uprising happening, a bit of a rebellion that our main character Morito has found himself in. He is charged with basically carting off and protecting a woman who is pretending to be the princess to lure away some of the rebels so the real princess and the royal family of Japan can go to safety. He does so, and in doing so, in protecting her, falls in love with this woman whose name is Kesa. Right?
Kesa,
Kesa, yeah. So then a number of years pass. Hey, rebellion's over. We did it, everyone. Congrats. Morito, though, still in love with Kesa. So, but as it turns out, Kesa is a married woman. She is married to the head of the guard for the Japanese emperor, I believe. And Morito's not going to really let that one slide. He is really infatuated with Kesa, so he's going to do everything within his power to try and win her over. That might even come to killing her husband, killing her aunt, and, as it so happens, killing her.
Whoa.
Bum,
bum, bum.
Okay. Tanner, since you gave us such a good description, what did you think of this film? What are your first impressions on Gate of Hell?
It's good. I liked it. I had a solid time watching it. It is obviously directorially quite strong. The visual stylings of it are really the thing I think that has given it its reputation. I think it's real. Obviously, if you're watching this in 1953, it really pops. I learned in doing a slight bit of research about it, just trying to find some trivia tidbits, that it was the first color film released out of Japan, which is insane.
Well, and they come out of the gate with the most colorful film ever made.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It looks brilliant.
It was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
We watched Drive My Car, much less colorful.
That's true. I mean, yeah, hard to argue with that. But the narrative is obviously quite melodramatic, but I think it goes to some darker areas that really surprised me. As opposed to some American things I've seen out of that subgenre that was really hitting its stride in the 50s and so on. So yeah, I liked it. Not over the moon about it by any means, but good movie, I think.
Abram, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's all right. I feel like I'm already forgetting what happened, and I finished watching it about 30 minutes ago, and I
Oh
think
wow.
that's more for me a testament to the screenplay and the plot more so than any of the technical aspects of the film or even the performances. I have to say, I think that the color grading and the shot composition is so arresting that it's certainly among the most beautiful films I've seen, at least as of late. I was really quite taken by the aesthetic. And I sort of felt almost whenever I kind of found myself dropping out of the narrative a little bit, kind of losing interest in our central conflict, I was sort of immediately drawn back in by a really striking image. I think
Hmm.
especially images of nature, while obviously the very bright costume design, I think, is what captures your attention, the production design. I actually found we were just taking like a moment to include an insert shot of a river or the tree line or the sky or the waves. I found that really, really beautiful. Otherwise, I think that the by the end of the film, the plot reaches somewhat of an interesting conclusion. But along the way, I just found myself sort of um, uninterested as the novelty of the plot sort of wore thin for me. So I think it's okay, but it certainly didn't stick with me that much, and probably won't.
Tucker, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm going to echo almost everything that Abram said, and I think that for me, why this is a solid enough movie, and it certainly has its strong technical elements. The reason why I struggle to place it any higher is because it's a really really simple story. Frankly, I am surprised by 90 minutes worth of screen time. Not very many things happen, especially outside of the surprisingly like complicated first 15 minutes of this movie.
Yeah.
It slows to a
Yeah.
crawl, which I don't think is necessarily it being slow is not my problem with it, but it being slow and then having so few characters that are of meaningful importance to the plot, and then even within the small group of characters that we have that we're focusing on, they don't get frankly very much like interaction. There's a lot of separate scenes, and then when they come together, it's very fleeting moments. It's a film that I think is artistically very interesting because it is very bold. It's there's nothing really like it in terms of the tone and style that it goes for. But for me, I think that the concept of the romantic slash political struggle tension that's in the background is interesting, but I would rather see it narratively at least placed into a more complicated scenario that is a little bit more fleshed out in terms of the characters that are actually involved in it, because as it exists, it's a very broad strokes movie. These characters are very much the sort of archetypes of the character types that they represent, and that's just doesn't really do it for me.
For me, I pretty much agree with Abram and Tucker. I think this movie is all right. I think it's a little forgettable in its plot, but the cinematography, the set design, the costumes, and the music are all really something that stood out to me as being noteworthy. I mean, it's beautiful. The colors are really special. It's lit in this very interesting, very bright, and it like the lighting is accentuating the colors, and it's very unrealistic, but it looks very good. And so I find that very interesting. But the love story kind of is like one note, if in that I get it, and then we keep going and going on this line of, will Morito and like get what he wants. How does that conflict with what the other characters want, most importantly Kesa? um and while the ending is a little surprising to me, I found myself kind of walking in that direction as we got there. And so the stuff that's interesting to me on this film is definitely more on the technical side, and maybe on the setting side, like the world that
Sure.
this film takes place in, rather than the actual plot of it in itself. Didn't really inspire a whole lot, but yeah, there's some somewhat interesting stuff to talk about with the visuals and with the music. I like the
Hmm.
musical performances that we see. I forget the name of this instrument, but this big
Oh
long
sure.
guitar
Yeah.
thing that Kesa plays is really beautiful in this film, and I like that we just linger on watching her play, and the emotion of the scene is not told through the dialogue, but through the music that she's playing, and that that's a cool technique.
Yeah.
Tucker, where should we begin on this discussion?
I
Or
think
go
another
next? We've
thing.
already begun, but yes.
Yeah.
Where to
With
now?
their thoughts. Yeah. One element that none of us really brought up that I think is something I think we all would agree is a big strong suit of this movie and is what still kept me engaged even as the plot was progressing very slowly and rather simply is this movie is very culturally fascinating to me. It is such a
Yes.
unique example of a time period that we don't know that much about. We don't have much personal connection to, but watching the ways in which the characters interact with each other and the kinds of architecture that they visit and these sort of rituals that they go through, it was really compelling for me to watch. I do want to talk about the beginning of the movie, which is like way more politically charged,
Yes,
frankly,
it's a
than
lot of
the
like
rest of it, but
historical table setting that ultimately
yeah,
doesn't really come to bear in any narrative sense, but I think especially for a Japanese audience is a lot more a lot more like grounding and table
Mhm.
setting than it is for us necessarily.
They're like, Kyoto, 800 years ago. And having been to Japan recently is like the way that they divide historical time periods with like labels as opposed to we use like centuries and stuff to know what the vibe of the time period of something happening in. But this one being in this high end period, they're like, yes, okay, oh yes, this is the 1100s, and so we have feudal lords and we have coups and battles and samurais and like that all
yeah,
Mhm.
is filled in immediately with just this one like mention of when it is. But for
yeah.
us as Western viewers, as American viewers, I think we do have to sit with it a little
He's
bit
like,
longer and be like,
yeah,
oh
samurai,
yes,
got it, perfect. That's all you need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I was trying to say like we'll talk about that in a bit.
okay.
Sorry.
because the cultural aspect of it is kind of separate from that political the politically charged opening the movie starts with because then we're then grounded in a place and a culture that is again very different from ours. And so what I found most interesting is watching the ways that they have this horse race and then afterward they have this meal where they sit down and they're supposed to figure about the race and put
The
aside the
friendship
differences.
ceremony or whatever.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, there's a friendship ceremony, and then there's the forget the race meal or whatever.
Oh yes, yes.
And the ways in which after the samurai complete a battle or whatever, they're given wishes by the new reigning lord. Like
Mhm.
there are each of these like scenes are based around something that I think is really unique and interesting culturally, and it gave me kind of a look into obviously a different time and culture that I'm totally unfamiliar with, and so I felt very grounded in this time period, in just all the ways that they interacted with each other and the ways like the ways that their houses are very sparse and it's just like a small like I guess tatami mat of some kind, a circle or sitting on the ground like it felt very culturally engaging to me. And so that's mostly what the lens I was watching this movie from is trying to pay attention to the ways that the characters interact and exist in this time period because that's nothing I've really seen like it.
I mean, for me, that cultural interest is both a thing of interest and also a barrier because the
Yeah,
ways
sure.
that the characters that the culture impacts how people act is very interesting in this.
Yeah.
And I notice this a lot in Japanese film, but the stoicism and this film is obviously playing in the tradition acting wise of kabuki theater. And I just looked briefly on IMDb. Kazuo Hasegawa, the guy who plays Marito, came up in the kabuki theater, and this is a different style of performance than the Western theater, Western like
Mhm.
in-house theater and then in film and TV. It to us, I think, or to me, it can read as very exaggerated in its expression, but at the same time very reserved in its like
Mm.
depiction in what the emotion and the internal strife within the characters is so hidden and put away and in the background of these characters' minds, and yet they do perform so bombastically. They are so expressive, and so that kind of disconnect, this stoicism that I read, makes it a little hard to really get into the emotional interior of a lot of our characters.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so I like then have to read these external, the external face. You've all probably heard the saying of you have your three faces: the face you show the world, the face you show your friends, and the secret face you keep to yourself. And
Mhm.
that kind of concept feels like
This
it's
is the one I show my friends.
your evil face. Yeah, the faces that our characters are showing each other are so carefully constructed, and I find pieces like this to be very interesting when we can see who has what facade and when the facade breaks down and what facade is necessary in this group versus in this group. In the court of the emperor, you are acting in this way, and standing up against, your wife, your lover's husband, you act this other way. That is
Yeah, I do.
all pretty interesting to me, and it's kind of hard to digest for me, but I think this film puts it out there in a fairly nice way. I'm confused by the way characters act, or like the performances that I'm given at some points, and it makes perfect sense for other points. So, something I noticed and like to think about for a film like this.
Sure.
Jim, I think that's an interesting point. I mean, the theatricality of it is obviously something that I think transcends any cultural barriers. At least for me, when I was watching, I pointed to the melodramatic aspects of the film and the storytelling. You brought up the kabuki theater, which is obviously also a touchstone for many of the actors, especially of this time. This is going to be relatively early in in Japanese film history. And also, I was doing a little bit of clicking around. I was like, oh yeah, uh, Kinugasa, the director, is also the director of A Page of Madness, which is also very informed by the sensibilities of the kabuki theater. Especially it's a silent film, so even more so has to be conveyed wordlessly in that sense. So I think a lot of his sensibilities are very much informed by that theatrical sense. And for me, I feel like I got a lot out of the performances, just because they did come up in that school. It seems like that they could impart a lot of these things, without a necessary outpouring of their heart, which is, I guess, something that separates rather this sort of Japanese melodrama from something like we might see in the 50s from like a Douglas Sirk in America.
Mhm.
This is a lot more, it is a lot of like reserved characters and trying to keep up the pomp and circumstances. When that breaks through or breaks down is when a lot of the more fascinating things come through. As you mentioned, the lead actor Hasegawa is really interesting to watch, like truly like scary when he breaks down and isn't trying to keep up appearances anymore. When he is like stalking outside
Yeah.
of Kessa's house or like going to her aunt's home and threatening her or whatever, is like, oh shit, this guy's like scary. Like he's
Mhm.
really putting on some airs right now that are really effective. And then
My
Kyo, the actress oh, yeah, go ahead, Timo.
well, that kind of Hasegawa's performance slash Morito's character is constantly making me question what kind of man he is, because
Yeah.
we're shown he's maybe an honorable man, he's a loyal man. He sides with he sides against the coup plotters, against his brother, and then afterwards he's so determined to go after this woman and this romance, and to go to such violent extremes for it. The words you use, scary, is very apt. Like,
Hmm.
like, really, what kind of man is this? Like, how does he act? It's hard for me to tell because he has
Yeah.
these very diametrically opposed kind of versions of himself.
If I may, if you gentlemen would allow me to bring a bit of modern context into this and a bit of a modern reading, um, Rito's a bit of a nice guy, if you ask me. He's a little bit of a guy who's like, I do everything that's right. I serve the emperor, no questions asked, and all that I ask for in return is a wife who stays at home and does what I say. Is that so much
Government
to ask?
mandated
Government
GF.
mandated GF.
He literally asks the emperor for a government mandated
That is his
wife.
one wish.
Yes.
His greatest desire in life.
Yes. And so while I was watching this, I was like, man, Rito's like an incel character. Like this is the first ever recorded incel. which I found really interesting to sort
Nah,
of
I'm
track.
sure there's some in like Shakespeare plays and all
That's
that.
a
Yeah.
fair point. That's a fair point. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it.
it's interesting because I like sort of this admission that he has at the end of the film after he's accidentally killed Kesa, as he's
Mhm.
sort of talking about this madness inflicted on him by his love for her, and he's governed by this like clear moral code in many ways, and we see through his conquest for Kesa a sort of break from that, and sort of a need to, as he becomes a monk, as he makes up his mind in the last minute
Mhm.
of the film to become a monk and to travel down that path, sort of a return to that. And so I think it's sort of interesting to wonder about the film's ideas about gender and about love and about relationships here, because while we have this one character whose infatuation has steered him away from this sort of virtue or real position of status and importance, we also have this other character whose wife didn't tell him what was going on,
Yeah.
and that is considered a failing as well. And I think the film has a very rigid idea of the relationship between a husband and a wife. And I think it's interesting the fact that um, he's that he's not killed at the end of the film by
Mhm.
what's his name?
Wataru.
Yeah,
Wataru?
Wataru doesn't.
Otaru, yeah.
He has no interest in trying to kill him.
Mhm.
And it almost feels as though there is an element of like there's a moral here that the audience is supposed to leave with, almost
Mhm.
this like understanding about how to exist in the world between a husband and wife.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think that it comes very late, and it's very heavy handed. It's very obvious and litigated in literally about 3 minutes. But I think that it does govern a lot of the characters' actions and the morality of the narrative. I think it's very interesting Wataru's sadness, almost chief sadness that he wasn't trusted by Kesa, more so than the fact that she was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he mentions that a bunch. I think about
Mhm.
Wataru, what his opinion about the race is, about whether or not he will win against Morito, that he leaves it up to fate, to the gods, to
Yep.
however it will be. And he's like, I think I will win, but I also know that these things are not always in my own control. And so that kind of, I think, conflicts with Morito, who seems to take what he wants into his own control and
Yeah.
to like go to chase for it, to ask the emperor to arrange this marriage, to then continue to pursue it after everyone laughs at him because she's already married. I think that these two characters are meant to be compared in their in like every single one of their qualities and all of their actions. Like they are
Sure.
pretty not opposites, but different sides of maybe different coins.
Uh,
Two,
Different
a
sides of
5 yen
different-
coin and a 10 yen coin and opposite
Yeah,
sides.
I see.
I think Morto's. I think he's an interesting character, but I also think he's just kind of, to me, a confusing character
Mm.
because the movie opens, and when we are introduced to him, he is a very heroic character. He saves Kesa's life. He's very understanding and seemingly very respectful of her when they first interact. He's like, okay, well, make sure that you're safe over here, like protecting her from these guys who are like a little bit more, like they're coming on to her a little bit stronger. And then there's this time gap, and this is very much what Abram was mentioning, that he says he's like corrupted by the madness of his love. And this is where I think the movie operates in its broadest stroke, and for me,
Mhm.
it's because it like so it seems to skip so greatly in its progression of its characters. That is where I think the most interesting ground is not covered. Where Morito, as seemingly a respectful and loyal guy from what we see at the beginning of the film, seems to change so much on a dime the moment when he realizes that he's not going to be able to immediately get what he wants. that it feels like a totally different character to me. As someone who didn't really know what the movie was about going in, watching this happen, and then the reveal comes that that she's married and that he can't necessarily have her because of that. And then I like this section of the movie where like people are kind of like, it's gossiping about this. It's like, oh, I can't believe it's like this crazy soldier guy is like is just is doing this and like creating this kind of ruckus socially. But then we like cut back to him, and we don't after not seeing him for a little bit, and he's just totally off the rails. Like he's like, I will do what I want. I will. No one can stop me. I am completely. My mind is completely geared towards this, and I'm like, okay, I don't know that much about this guy, but from what we saw, I don't feel like this is the kind of guy that he is, and so I feel like the movie's kind of at odds with itself, trying to get me to like the character at first and then watch his corruption, but the corruption comes on so quickly that I don't really feel. I don't feel like I'm emotionally like impacted by this change. I'm just like, wait, who is this guy? What are you talking about? What do you mean he's this crazy about this woman?
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because the sort of the plot structure of the film is quite odd in a lot of ways. Because as you're saying, I don't even know if we're necessarily supposed to like or identify with Morito at the beginning of the film, in so much as we're just supposed to have him be constructed as this very steadfast, reliable, and skilled military warrior, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of see him in two modes. We see him in that mode, and then we see him in the mode of being this sort of decorated war hero in this time of peace. But there's such a disjunction there because the wartime element is really concerned almost entirely just with plot. We get very little character there. Obviously, we get this note about his relationship with his brother and his sense of virtue, but that's really only exists insofar as there is a coup that must be dealt with. And the dealing with actually happens almost entirely off screen. I thought for a second that when we cut back to this narrating voice that we were getting just like a 10-second refresher on what just happened. And then I realized, oh wait, no, we're just explaining that the forthcoming battle has been won off screen. And I think that because we move through this so quickly, we sort of find ourselves in a position where the difference being drawn in his behaviors in these different cultural moments doesn't really hit for me. I think it exists on a surface level, and that's where I kind of find that the plot operates in general. It works on the surface level, and that's why I just think if there is some sort of like reading of this as a parable about this cultural understanding of relationships, because I think a lot is supposed to be inferred or brought into the narrative based on maybe a deeper understanding of this sort of cultural hierarchy that Morito is then rebelling against, right? Because we see him get admonished for the way he acts. We see him act out of turn. We know that he's going against this sort of hierarchical and social taboo. But I don't necessarily think that the film is even frankly that concerned with diving that deep into it. And I think for me, a big portion of that issue is just because we spend so little time in the what's ostensibly the inciting incident, which is this whole
the
rebellion.
This whole rebellion and coup.
Yeah. The thing for me is that I don't believe very hardcore that the love exists between the two characters. Like that it's foisted upon us as a plot device that he comes, he's like, oh, this is a good idea, okay, let's do it, and then we cut around, and then by the time we're like back in the story, he's like proclaiming his love for Kesa, and at that point in the film I don't buy it. I only buy it later on because he's so insistent about it that I just give in, and I'm like, okay, yeah I believe it, because he said it 9 million times at this point.
I mean, that is an interesting sort of, it's not really an inversion, but I guess it's a subversion of at least what I was expecting of the narrative, right? I didn't anticipate that Kesa was going to not be interested in him.
at
And
all.
so I think that the idea that this isn't necessarily a film predicated on romance so much as it is predicated on like this very one-sided infatuation
Yeah.
Yeah.
is interesting.
The
But
danger of
again,
desire.
yeah, but again, I
Lust,
think that
maybe.
that even requires, as you were talking about earlier, Timo, this sort of notion of an interiority that we don't really get, at least not, I think, to a satisfying degree until the end of the
Mhm.
film. Because I do think things pick up when Morito becomes a lot more outwardly malevolent. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
that the
sure.
last 25 minutes of the film, 30 minutes of the film are actually quite intriguing, both in
Yeah.
terms of how they're put together. I think the filmic language of this very quiet, shadowy approach into
Mhm.
Wataru's into his home is very interesting. The way he threatens and manipulates his aunt, that's really good, and I think that the end point of that madness is evident and well characterized. I think I just don't sort of find myself compelled by what it takes to get us to that point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, because you mentioned, Abram, that the middle section of this movie and the part where I was talking about the gossip, you're right, there's this other side of the coin that is Morito, quote unquote, rebelling against the social structure, as you mentioned. And I think that's an interesting point, and maybe something the movie's trying to touch on, but also like the way that he's rebelling against the social structure is being like, oh, she's married. Too bad. I want her. And it's like it's such a simple goal that it feels like it's wrong. It's like what is past that? Why is he so interested in achieving this goal? Like we don't know much about him. We haven't seen him have the same desire or drive in other elements of his life because again we haven't seen too much about him, and we don't know the other parts of his life that this would then be impacting because we don't really know like the friends that he has or the social standing that he has otherwise, and so because that goal is so simple yet so all-consuming, and it feels like it feels cartoonish almost, where it's like it's the romance version of like a cartoon villain wanting to like take over the world or like get a giant sack of money or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like this doesn't really make any actual sense. It just is his goal, and now we have to deal with it.
So I think they try to do some of this in a couple particular ways. Kesa first and foremost is sort of described as, you know, she is a almost a like a Paris in like the Battle of Troy sort of figure, where she is like, you know, this very beautiful woman who everyone understands is quite desirable, of course. And then you get the scene where the Emperor Kiyomori sees her play her instrument for the first time and is like, "I get it." Like, and you know that is a cultural. I guess maybe you have to take either you do or you don't like take that on face value kind of thing. That is maybe inherent to the theatrical nature of this storytelling. But yeah, again, yeah, but like yeah, you never see these like the things that we would typically associate with a blossoming romance or something in a movie where our characters share an intense moment of dialogue potentially, or you know there's a strong chemistry between our two actors or something like that,
Mhm.
purposefully of course, because this is not a reciprocated love. This is something that is really one-sided in Morito's case. um so yeah, maybe it literally just is that he has his mind set on this, but then as we've already established, like, do we see that leap in logic happen? Do we see that change, of course, happen in his character? Not necessarily. Again, I think there are some things that are maybe set up in this direction that I don't think the threads are fully connected. I think of an early scene between Morito and his brother when he realizes that his brother has sort of sided with the rebels in this coup of the government, and his
And he's
brother
like
asks him,
incensed. He's
yeah,
really
he's first
angry
of all,
about
yeah,
it.
well, he's pissed the hell off about it, I guess. But then also his brother has this line that's like, "Hey, do you ever like think about why you serve Kiyomori? Like why you have this fealty towards him?" And he doesn't really answer. So maybe that is supposed to be a thing that he is maybe having this reckoning with like why he just is in service of this guy without really questioning it, and like he's standing up for this particular thing that he wants that is flying in the face of what the general society is saying or accepts or whatever. Again, I go back to like, are these threads fully connected throughout the story? I would argue kind of no.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Tanner, because I also think that there is at least in my mind, there's this potentially interesting idea of him as this military man who uh, exists for the sake of conquest, right? And
Hmm.
always is in conquest and is dominant.
Yes.
But we don't really we see him in battle sometimes, and I actually think that the battle sequences are extremely well put together in this film. Both the ones of large scale where we have
Hmm.
so many extras and these
Yep.
beautiful costumes running around, or when he's dueling that
Like some one-on-one sword
yeah.
fight stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's very well done, and I think it illustrates this intensity in him and this military strategy and strength in him. And I think that in a slightly different film, that is in some ways put against his romantic conquests, right? To show a weakness in
Yeah.
him as a
He
person.
certainly seems like a character who's not super well respected amongst like the other generals and
Hmm.
emperors
They
and
laugh at
whatnot.
him.
Yeah, a number of times.
They laugh at him for being happy when he's kneeling in front of the emperor,
Mhm.
or he's not even the emperor, right?
No, he's
He's
not. He's a
the
general
monk.
yeah,
Yeah,
or
He's a
local
monk.
ruler.
oh, yeah, that's right.
I
Although
believe.
he's a monk, but he's a monk that is a leader.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
seems like they call him like Kiyomori the monk as kind of like an Ivan the Terrible kind of thing almost. Like
Yeah, it
it's just a
seems like it.
moniker.
Having tabbed around a little bit on the Heian period Wikipedia,
Sure.
Kiyomori is the name of.
As a white boys tend to do.
Yeah, Kiyomori is the name of an emperor from the time period that matches
Okay.
the dates that this movie's set in.
Yeah, and again, this is sort of the intrigue of it for me. Like, I would like to know more, just generally speaking, about this time period. And I
Hmm.
guess that is on a very personal note, a real strength in favor of the film when I sort of find myself wondering and wanting to know more about these structures in this history. Obviously, in this case, it's both a criticism of the screenplay and a strength of the film's, I think, ambiance and production design.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Insofar as that, I think that the script could do more to at least um, place into context these characters' actions in this social structure, which I think is not particularly well explained. But I find myself just being so interested in what the film presents, just literally,
Yeah.
just the Japanese countryside and the rituals and ceremonies we see.
That's the
That
thing I was saying about the cultural stuff.
The
Yeah.
way,
Absolutely.
just the
Yeah.
way that people sit down to eat dinner with each other, it's so very different. It looks to us, it looks very uncomfortable. To me, it looks uncomfortable, but it also is it's very fascinating just to see how it's different. And my mind is like filled with questions of how does this time period differ from other time periods? Like, is this the same time period as Seven Samurai, right? Or like some other maybe like more well-known Japanese historical films. How does this fit in this big giant lineage of history? Um, I don't know. It does make me
Yeah.
want to. It makes me want to after we're done recording, like tab around on a ton more Wikipedia pages and see
Yeah.
just like read and see what's up.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it does. It because it looks so good and because it is presented so well, we are immediately engaged with it. That's what I was saying about the cultural element. But I do think, Abram, you make an interesting point about the general time period that this movie does what it does to set us up in. And this is, I think, my biggest confusion about the movie. I don't know if this is a strength or
Hmm.
not, but that opening section is not only really high energy and really beautiful. I think that's where some of the best color is, where some of the best shots are.
Hmm.
It has this like really crazy look where it's like a set of battle sequences almost. It's like a wartime thing, but it's also like these like pauses where like we're looking at like cloth blowing in the wind. I'm like,
Yep.
whoa, what the heck's going on here? And also, at the same time, where I'm very arrested by the beautiful visuals that are happening, they are slinging phrases and time periods and people and generals and rebellions and all this stuff. I'm like, oh God, is this what this movie's going to be? I'm not going to be able to understand a single thing that's going on here. And of course, that gets us to Morito and Keisa meeting in the way that they do. But also, by the time that we get a X amount of time later time skip, it honestly feels like very little of the political setup actually impacts the ways the characters interact with one another.
Yeah,
there's of course
I agree completely.
The element that Morito is a soldier. Okay, we get that. We get to see that. That's fine enough. And because he was a part of this and didn't side with the traitors, he gets his wish granted. I understand that as setup, but I do think that Keisa, like the fact that she was part of the rulers, like she's like a stand-in for the princess or whatever. That is actually like not relevant at all to the rest of the movie. I was surprised that that plot thread was not like more important, or that element of her character, which felt like a interesting climactic sort of thing of that she was a stand-in for the rulers. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. The fact that that was not brought up again was, I think, very confusing. The fact that the elements of like the rebellion and his brother are not a little bit more entwined with like the drama going forward, I thought was a missed opportunity. And then also Wataru, who I think is a decently interesting character, especially by the end of the movie. The fact that, am I correct, we didn't see him at all in that first section of the movie. It makes like feel like, again, it just feels disconnected. Like these are two halves of a story that aren't as intertwined as maybe I was hoping in terms of setup and payoff. It feels like a totally different movie in that first bit, and I prefer the second chunk of the movie where I'm not being inundated with terminology that I would have a hard time comprehending. But it makes me appreciate the two sections for what the qualities they do bring, but they do feel so separated that I'm left with a little bit of like shock in the moment where I'm like, oh no, the movie is not. It's not that first bit at all, and it's almost not concerned with what happened in that first bit.
The characters say, I mean, the vibe that I get in that wish giving scene is that they're like, "Hey, we did it. We defeated the coup plotters. Things are back to normal. Things are good, and now we'll move on with life." And I agree, it's unsatisfying, and it doesn't show up elsewhere when it could. But that is the stance that the film takes, is that the righteous, I guess, won out, and oh, it's done.
Yeah. I think at a certain point we should also look at it a bit as like it is like a Japanese studio movie, like, of the time.
Yeah.
So it probably is an element of like, I don't know, entertain some people. The audiences expect a little bit of samurai action and
Sword slinging,
Exactly. So I think it's also a bit of that.
Well,
this
yeah, I mean,
is,
you mentioned it, but let's consider the context of this film. Commercial movie, exported from Japan, in color, goes to Cannes and wins the Palme d'Or. Like,
yes,
that is a different,
and wins best foreign language film
exactly,
at the
at the
Academy
Oscars.
Awards.
Yeah.
So this is a different operating space than something that's produced for the domestic market, that is produced for maybe less for commercial gain. I have a hard time. I don't know enough about Japanese business, like film business history, because I would like to make comparisons to Kurosawa and Ozu and these other directors of the time period that are making films in this decade, in the 50s. What are they aiming for with box office? How is box office and the need to like sell tickets affecting movies in Japan? I know how that works in America. We get Greatest Show on Earth or whatever because they need to sell tickets to the movies. But like, it's curious. I want to know more. Unfortunately, can't really tell a whole lot from this movie about that, but maybe a documentary that's about that specific topic would be more helpful.
I don't think we really fully talked about we of course went a little bit into the character of Morito, and we can talk a bit more about Wataru if we want to. But I want to talk about Keisa and Michiko Kyo's performance, because it is quite still and contained, but I think it also becomes quite affecting in like the final night that she has with her husband, as she
Yeah.
sort of has figured out this plan of what she needs to do. And even in the prior sequence with her and Burrito, where he's like, "Hey, I will fucking kill you, your aunt, and your husband if you don't help me murder your husband." And she has this resignment that is very sad and heartbreaking in that moment, and then you don't fully get clued into what she's planning to do until she has like one specific line that's like, she tells her husband like, "Why don't you sleep in my room? Why don't you sleep in my bed?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, I see. I'm putting the pieces together. I see what her plan
Hmm.
is." And it's, it's quite doomed and faded and everything like that. All these big emotions that you would expect from a melodramatic story like this. That the lover has fated herself to die in place of her husband giving up her life and everything like that. It is quite affecting. I think Kyo sort of pulls all of this stuff off, even in a role where she's not getting to be as big or have as many lines as her male co-stars.
I had an interesting thought about female agency, and this film strikes a pretty nice chord, I think, because think about how Morito goes about getting married. He doesn't go ask Kesa, let's get married. He asks
No.
the Emperor, marry me to this woman. It's
Hmm.
all with the men. The men are deciding, the men are going to tell the women what to do. But then at the end of the film, Kesa, without telling any men what she's going to do,
Hmm.
specifically any men, including her husband, like we were talking about earlier, um, she takes action for what she
Herself, yeah.
wants for herself, and succeeds in it, even though it means her own sacrifice with her
Hmm.
life. But that this like kind of a reversal of the gender roles of a where's women's power? Women's have power in their actions, even though they're disenfranchised in their life and unable to control, who they marry, what they do, what their role is. Within that little tiny world, they still can make choices
Yeah.
for themselves. I mean,
And
despite the fact that these are fatal choices, these are choices that you're not making what to eat. You're not making a choice about what's for breakfast. You're like, do I live or do I die for what I believe in?
mhm.
And I think that's a very strong character note to choose to die for this thing that she believes in.
I mean, Marito and Wataru also have these different and individual, but also, still both like earth shattering, almost reckonings with like how much she loved. Only loved Wataru basically, but like Marito has this moment where he's like, "Oh, she loved you that much." Like he
Yeah.
just assumed she was with Wataru because like that was a thing that happened. Like it was an arranged marriage. Like he wanted to set up. He's like, "Oh, but like she actually cared about you enough to like sacrifice herself for you." And Wataru has this very different sort of reckoning about like, why didn't she tell me this? Like, why would she do that? Why would she sacrifice herself for me? Is that really the dynamic, or why wouldn't she talk to me about it? It's that agency thing you're talking about, Timo, for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think Wataru and Kesa's relationship is something that I'm actually really fascinated by in this movie because uh, we come into this movie and we see that first, I'm going to say just 40 minutes before Wataru is really a character that we're fully aware of.
Hmm.
And it is very much detached, as you're saying, Timo, between the male characters, and really the only female character of note is Kesa. And the way they talk a lot about her. They talk about her being an object of desire, about obviously being Morito's main goal. And then when we're introduced to Wataru, I felt that for me there was like this uh, established thing where I'm like, oh well, he's gonna be one of those guys.
Hmm.
He's gonna be one of the men in this culture that is just sees her as an object of desire and is happy that he has this wife. Again, because we don't know almost anything about him before we're introduced to him. I'm like, it's just gonna be like a situation like that. But then he's actually like a really caring husband, and like is asking her like what can he do for her, and like gives her compliments, and is like not questioning her when there's like this scandal going on. In any other situation, we've been trained as audience viewers of like, oh, the husband's gonna be mad at the wife for this. Like she has this sort of guilt of like, oh, my actions must have been improper to like bring this upon us. But he's like, no, like you did the right thing. Like I trust you as my wife, and he says a line of like the monk leader must have been very impressed by the way that you turned him down, and like, oh, I'm like, Wataru, you say nice guy. I'm like, no, he's a good guy. Like he is a genuinely caring husband, and that dynamic I think is really really fascinating. And I think also again as someone who likes this setup but wanted more out of the characters, I've really wanted to learn more about their relationship and the way that they connect to one another, and how they met and how that relationship grew to the point where Wataru is as protective and understanding and caring as he is. Because again, total subversion. I was not expecting that at all, and I was really compelled by the fact that there was just like supportive and caring, genuine, important male character in the movie that I wasn't expecting.
There's like a moment at the end before Keisa has them. I think it's like she's like trying to convince Wataru to follow along with her plan, and they are standing. He's like, "Come out into the garden and look. Let's look at the moonlight." And they just kind of stand there, and they embrace. And I thought that was noteworthy because I feel like I've never seen in a Japanese period piece, a Japanese historical film, a married man and woman character like embrace in a tender and loving and non-coercive way. Like that was a first for me. And so, yes, these two characters have a very unlike Morito's love, which I don't find believable. I do find Keisa and Wataru's love very believable because it's reciprocal. I see it going both ways between them
Yeah.
in their performance, and I think that's all performance. The Wataru's the actor Isao Yamagata. He has a very interesting face. I think that the way that they had cast these two men to play opposite each other is very much like based on how they look, and Wataru has a kindlier demeanor to him. His face, he doesn't. I don't really see him getting angry. We don't see him, scowling very hard like Morito does, and Morito's makeup with his eyebrows.
Yes,
I mean,
his
they're just
eyebrows are
going,
really,
they're going like that.
peaked. Yeah. He's got like the emoticon angry eyebrows, basically.
And Wataru does not, and so okay, that's intentional. We're supposed to read that of a difference between these two men, and that casting kind of difference stood out to me, almost immediately when Yamagata as an actor shows up on frame. I was like, this guy doesn't look like he's mean. This guy doesn't look like he's evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, gentlemen? What are we thinking? What are we feeling? Where do we want to go? Anywhere else? I'm looking through my notes.
I don't really have much else to say.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was just enjoying listening to you guys go back and forth. I think it's just sort of one of my lingering questions about the film in the end is really if we were constructing this relationship between Wataru and Keisa as this loving one, how are we supposed to feel really as the viewer when Wataru is on some level emotionally betrayed, and then not interested in taking any sort of material revenge? I think it's a very interesting ending, but there's so little of a denouement that there's really no chance to
You have to
understand that.
You got to digest it as you're like walking away from the theater almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting ultimately that he finds, and again, this certainly to some degree speaks to this sort of intrinsic kindness that you're talking about, Timo, just in the actor's face. But the choice not to at least try to kill at the end is interesting to me. And it just makes me wonder how, as an audience member, we're supposed to, what the film is trying to tell us to feel or think about Keisa by her not telling Wataru what was up.
Like the whole insistence from Morito is like, dude, kill me. That's what I deserve right now. You got to put me out of my misery. I committed this grievous sin and and everything. Almost seems a bit like a deconstruction of the more classical samurai film thing of like the lone swordsman seeking revenge, or imparting justice in the way that he sees fit, or the way that his moral code sort of portends that Wataru does like the opposite of that. He's like,
Mhm.
listen, man, this is not going to do anything for either of us at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tucker, I
Again,
think.
that was another subversion moment,
Yeah.
right? Of
Exactly.
you're like, oh, he's going to kill him, or frankly, there was also, I think, the thought in my mind that that Morito was going to kill himself.
Yep. Same here.
Yeah.
And then I think that's an interesting emotional subversion of not having any death. Well, between the two men
Uh-huh.
at the end of the film. Though on Morito's side, again, this kind of brings me back to another one of my issue about him like flip-flopping.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, yeah, you're in this shock moment of you killed the woman that you've been desiring after, but like, I don't know if I fully believed his like instant conversion, because he was also, this is a very theatrically written movie as well, and it really killed for me the emotional impact of this guy coming to this realization where he's like, I, Morito, say that I am going to become a monk and atone for myself. Like, you're not a person. Like, I don't buy this. But again, we don't really know this guy. We don't really know the range of emotions that he has, and so seeing him be one track mind for over half of the film, and then at the very end be like, oh, this has immediately impacted me so strongly, but he's not like panic attacking over it. He's composed and he's like, I have changed my mind and I will be a monk now. And I'm like, this is not emotionally
Well, I
satisfying
think
or
that
interesting.
comes
to me.
after he's panicky, I would say. After Wataru's
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, pal, I'm not gonna kill you. He's like,
Yeah.
All right.
no, I think
Yeah.
he comes a little bit around to Wataru's way of thinking. He's like, yeah, that probably wouldn't solve anything. I did fuck up, and I should probably live with that for the rest of my life. So I want to become a monk, which again is a little bit of maybe of a too neat of a button, but as you mentioned, Tucker, I think is a little bit of a like cultural theater thing. I think.
Yeah.
I think you, Tucker, I believe it was you brought up the idea of desire. And if we think to our cultural context and we think to the monk characters, there is a religious through line here. The saying goes in Buddhism, desire is the root of all suffering. And I think that idea is shown through the desire for, Morito's desire for Keisa leads to his undoing, his death, or to her death and his seemed like destruction and his to then become a monk. But the having Wataru not decide to kill him, or to not, if I will rephrase it here, have the desire to enact revenge and to rid himself of that desire in a very Buddhist sense is a way to preserve his peace and allow his mourning to go unfiltered and unadulterated by these very intense emotions of desire that could cause him to go somewhere terrible. And
it's literally like even at his lowest moment, Wataru is like the bigger and better person than Morito.
Yeah. And I think that is shown in the race scene. He's kind of the bigger and better person by very humbly accepting the defeat and not really chalking it up to anything other than I tried my best and it wasn't good enough. Yeah. I don't know where else in the movie this through line shows up, but the Buddhist faith combined with the Confucian philosophy, right? That's a big founding cultural idea of Japan, is still present today there. And so it's important to consider those aspects when reading a film like this.
For sure.
Shall we give it a score?
Yeah, you guys want some poem details while in the meantime?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. I do want to know some
I'm
details.
hungry for details.
At the 1954 Cannes Film Festival, Gate of Hell was the only recipient of the Palme d'Or this year. It was also, I should point out, the first Japanese film to receive the honor. So congratulations to Kinugasa there. Jury president this year was Jean Cocteau.
Of the Cocteau twins?
Well, I presume so. Other members of the jury.
Tucker.
Man, I just thought we were talking about the fucking Orphic trilogy. You know what I'm saying? I thought we were going to some Beauty and the Beast. You know what I'm saying? Come on, guys. little classic French cinema.
Well, classic French cinema. Well, speaking of classic French cinema, some folks on the jury, notable names. If you've taken a film theory 101 class, you probably will recognize the name André Bazin. Was on the jury this year, as was Spanish filmmaker who we're probably all familiar with. Louis Buñuel was on the jury this year.
Buñuel,
yes,
Love
yes.
this guy.
Oh man, Buñuel never won the Palme d'Or, right?
Let me do a quick
Talking about
check.
a Buñuel movie on Quest would go
Louis-
crazy
Yeah,
style.
The
dude.
Exterminating Angel. What a strange film.
Oh yes, Tucker, he did.
That's his most normal movie.
I know.
I don't know if you've ever seen other ones like L'Age d'Or. These things are crazy.
Los
Yeah.
Olvidados.
Obscure Object of Desire.
So,
I don't know
Buñuel
much about
did-
about 1961's Viridiana, but that is a Buñuel film
yeah.
that won the
Yeah, it
Palme
is.
d'Or.
Right, yeah. Oh wait. Oh, he did win. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sweet. Okay, that's gonna be
So
interesting.
eventually.
Please, oh great spin wheel. Please, oh great spin wheel.
Give us some give us the boon.
Of the other 42 films in contention for the award this year, which is a lot. By the way, I tried to do a little bit of research as to why there were so many at this film festival. I couldn't really
Palm
find
Film Festival.
Palm Film Festival. But yeah, usually, even in this era, it usually doesn't pass 40, and there were 43 this year. Which is an impressive feat because I recognized almost none of these names of these films or
interesting.
their directors. The only one I did get was a film that we have talked about, gentlemen. It's From Here to Eternity. Was at the Palm or the
Oh,
what did I call it?
really?
The Cannes
The
Film
Palm
Festival
Film
this year. Cannes Film Festival, yes, was From Here to Eternity was in competition this year.
Interesting.
Hmm. Well, this one
Shout out
had
to Fred Zinnemann.
this
Yeah,
one
yeah.
had better. I'd say Gate of Hell improved on the sound recording technique compared to here.
Wait,
From
but
Here to
the version
Eternity.
you watched had really crappy sound.
Yeah,
right?
but you
You
guys
just
told,
knew that it did.
you guys told me it had good sound on the Criterion version, so
Yes.
not a legitimate criticism, not
Also,
a real note.
Great transfer on the Criterion version. They did a great job. That shit was
Well,
crisp.
this is in the
Even the-
collection, baby.
Even the Internet
Yes.
Archive. Well, so the Internet Archive version I watched was from Criterion. It had the logos at the start.
It had the little thing at the beginning.
Jenna's Food.
Uh-huh.
But what a great transfer. I mean, just really crisp, really
Mhm.
colorful.
Yeah, but then they recorded it on a potato, the sound or whatever.
Yeah, they really messed up the sound transfer.
Hmm.
Whatever, just by punishment, I guess. Just
Mhm.
desire is the root of all suffering, right? And I want good sound.
All right.
What?
You desired to not rent it or
I-
log into Criterion.
Yeah, I
Oh.
desire to not have to ask anybody for the Criterion login
Yeah, which we would have given you, and it would
Next
have been
time.
very quick.
next time.
Next time, baby.
Scores? Should we do it?
Let's do it.
I've got one.
3, 2, 1, boom.
Oh, I was looking at your faces. I didn't have to think about that. Beep. That's not a number. I put a.
Yeah, get
6
that.
foot
Get
two.
that little.
Tucker gave it a 6'2".
Tanner spoiled a little bit, but the average
Sorry.
is 6.5, right around there. The point breakdown is Abram and Tucker gave it a 6.2, a 6'2", if we're gonna take that. Tanner gave it a 6.9, and or a 6.8, and I gave it a 6.9. So 6.2, 6.2, 6.8, 6.9. That equals 6.5. And so
tie.
we do have a tie. We have to talk about Gate of Hell versus the Tin Drum.
The tin
Oh.
drum.
That's the Goat Quest episode
It
that
is.
keeps pulling in like 800
People
views a
love
day or
the
whatever.
tin drum video. People love it, baby.
I go Tin Drum above, personally.
I agree. I go Tin Drum above.
Okay.
Despite me putting a lower score for Tin Drum on the tie during the review, I remember far more about that movie than I do Gate of Hell.
Yeah.
I just remember that creepy little kid.
Yeah, it's
Freak.
like you guys say, it's arresting.
True.
The kid
I
is
guess
like a kid in Tin Drum.
I'd go
That's true.
tin drum above, I think. Yeah.
I wouldn't, but don't matter none.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Well, we got a couple people. Well, I guess Abram's the only one who's consistent, voting Tin Drum above and giving it a higher score.
Yeah.
But whatever. There you have it. Gate of Hell, spot number 29, 6.5 on the list. Good job.
On the
Yeah.
list.
On the list. Alrighty, let's spin the wheel so I can go
In
back
the
to reading
heights.
about the high-end
Hang
period
on.
in Japan.
Hang on. Sorry. I got the wrong list pulled up on Letterboxd. You have to give me a
Oh,
second.
oh.
What did you do?
I-
God.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I fucked up. Okay, now we're good.
I want to eat this delicious dinner. Come on, guys.
Okay, all right, there you go.
It's been sitting underneath his webcam this whole time. Sing for me, please, Tana.
Wheel, wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it on real? Wheel, wheel, what's your deal?
And Wheel's deal is number 32.
32, you say? 32.
Boonwell.
No Boonwell
Oh,
this
that would be
time.
awesome.
No Boonwell this time. We are staying in the country of Japan, though.
Okay.
I'm excited about this one. Another visual feast, if I can, sort of read the consensus surrounding this film from the year 1980. This is a film that stars Kenichi Hagiwara, Tsutomu Yamazaki, and Tetsuya Nakadai. This is from a little guy named Akira Kurosawa, who we may or may not be familiar with. It is his film Kagemusha.
Kagemusha.
Never seen it. Never seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Either.
I haven't seen it.
I have a feeling it's going to go crazy style.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to say Ron, but I didn't actually know if Ron won the
No,
Palme d'Or or
Ron did
not.
not win. But Kagemusha
I thought you were say
did.
Dreams because I know Dreams has a lot of color.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
They made a game about that.
Yeah, this is gonna go crazy style. You are right.
This is gonna go. I have not seen this. Oh boy,
Cool-
this is gonna be really
cool-
fun.
Cool flat 180 minutes on this one, BT
Yeah,
Dub.
pack
Oh,
a
boy.
lunch. Almost 3 hours. Pack
Yeah.
a lunch.
Yeah.
Yep. 2 3/4.
Timo,
Yes.
Timo, put this on your big projector.
Yep.
There's some-
We
there's
putting this
some
on the big
images here.
projector. This is gonna be fun. And will be really fun, I think, to compare. We're gonna get to see what, so 53
is this-
to 80. So
Yeah,
we get a
53 to
little
8. I want to see if there's any Japanese films that won in the media in the
interim,
between here.
Tanner?
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
interim. Thank you.
Holy moly! The budget for this movie was 2.3 billion yen.
Hey, that's quite a bit.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Any idea, Tanner? If there's
No, looks like this is the next win for the
Oh,
country of
interesting.
Japan. And then they won a couple years later in 1983 with the Ballad of Narayama, which we've already talked about.
Ah, okay.
So, yes.
Okay.
Another one of the Goat Quest episodes that people just love to watch.
Like, yeah, dude.
Why do they love the Battle of Narayama so much? I don't understand.
No, I thought about that movie while I was watching this one. I was like,
Mhm.
Narayama's pretty good, actually. Let's think
I
about
still
that.
think about that movie a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
should
think we
have.
rated that one soft.
I
When
think we
they when
did.
they walk up to the
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
bone canyon to go
Yeah,
die,
dude.
that's
There's
like
there's fucking
haunting.
cool shit in the Ballad of Narayama.
Reminds me of the Gorge.
Does the Gorge win Palme d'Or this year? I forget.
I hope so.
No, I think
Scott Derrickson deserves his first.
I don't
his
think it
first
got
Cannes Film
submitted.
Festival.
We are, of course, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be having the next Cannes Film Festival to determine our new winner, but that's not for a couple
Mhm.
of weeks' time.
Scott Derrickson didn't win for the Black Phone.
He did not win for the Black Phone. I think actually, 2022 that was Triangle of Sadness, right? Yes, Triangle of Sadness won.
I watched Triangle of Sadness, and I also watched the Black Phone.
Oh, yeah?
On somebody's like airplane monitor row in front of me, and I liked that more than Triangle of Sadness.
Oh, well, hey, there you go. Well, speaking of Abram, maybe it sounds like you're right in the
I
world.
know. That's fucking stupid. And
Ruben
oh my
Ostlund's
God.
next film.
He sucks.
Oh yeah,
That movie's gonna be so bad.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention, since we were talking about the Ballad of Narayama and like the soft rating on it, I was like, we did a Quest re-rank for Best Picture nominees. Maybe be in order at the halfway point for this one, but I don't know. Just an idea.
Maybe.
Just a theory.
We can put that in our pot and let it stew for a little while.
Yes, yes.
We don't need to discount such a and smoke it
Think
too.
about smoking it.
Think about it.
Plonk it.
Think about it. That'll do it for us for this week. Thanks for talking about Gate of Hell, and very excited to talk about Kagemusha next time. I'm seeing on the poster George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola present a film by Akira Kurosawa,
Holy
and so
hell.
I am
Oh,
like,
guys, it has a subtitle: Kagemusha,
The Shadow Warrior. You're right. I just
Shadow
looked
Warrior.
at that too. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yep, we're gonna have fun with this. So stay here on Backlot Banter for all your favorite movie review content. And you know what I say: stay cool, keep warm. Peace.